This is Christine, and this is the first time I'm doing something like this. So bear with me on any technical issues or verbal issues that I might have. Hopefully, you will find this interesting. And yeah, so basically, when I see I watch the YouTubes, and a lot of them are about, how to market your fish, how to sell your fish, and how to manage your fish room, and and go over things like the nitrogen cycle, um, and cleaning, and and just maintenance and all that. But none of them have really gotten into the running the business side of it. And I was thinking that that might be something that would be beneficial to people, because as this being my second year having my fish breeding business, I learned some things recently when I was doing my taxes. And there were some things that, I didn't think about when I was first starting, that now I'm like, okay, well, now I can see how this is important, and what to try and better define that. In addition to that, I am starting over. So what that means is that we are getting electrical work done in the fish room. And so when that happens, we are going to take everything out of the fish room, and I'm going to actually take you guys along on that journey, and have you see what happens, and see what the challenges we have, because we're going to be pulling up carpets. We're going to be dealing with mold issues that I've discovered. I bought a almost commercial style dehumidifier, one that has a pump in it, and just uh, we're starting over. And so we're going to take all the tanks down, we're going to put all the fish into buckets, and we're going to do all the work, and then we're going to build it back up. And when we build it back up, we're going to take into consideration things that I've learned, and I'm going to, like I said, take you guys along on that journey. So I wanted to start from the big basics. This is going to assume that you've been doing fish for a bit, maybe a year, maybe two, maybe a month. You understand the nitrogen cycle. You understand tank maintenance. You understand a lot of the terminologies, but you never really got into breeding. And maybe, like with my background, you kind of fell into it and you decided you liked it. So let's go ahead and get started. If the slide will work for me. Hang on. Yep. Okay. That's the correct slide. So the things that we're going to go over is learning about breeding fish. I mean, I'm not going to go into this in a deep dive. It's going to be high level. Some of the basics. There are a lot of amazing YouTubers out there that really get into it, and they are much better at it than I am. I'm not saying I'm a good fish breeder or anything of the sort. I'm still learning. But we're also going to learn about disease. Disease is one of the things that I struggle with, and I'm still very much learning on that. And I'll have an example to show you guys during the presentation. And then managing your business. And I saved the best for last, right? Because all of us, hopefully, or at least maybe, know how to keep their fish for the most part. So let's get started on fish breeding. So what we want to do first is, when you're breeding fish, the most important thing, I mean, this is bigger than food, this is bigger than the tank size, this is bigger than anything, is your water. So you have to understand what is happening with your water. If you're on a well, you tend to have water that has a lot more minerals. If you're in a city, depending on where you're at, like here in the Pacific Northwest, our water is really soft. So what you want to do is you want to cater to your water type, or make adjustments, so that way the fish that you want to breed you have the water that best suits them, not necessarily making them best suit your water. So you'll want to also check your water parameters often. What happens is that, especially when you live in a city, or anywhere that has a water treatment plant, is that they have to add additives to the water very periodically to be able to make adjustments because they've found something. Maybe there's a bacteria in there, or something like that. There's a lot of whole technical reasons that is way over my head. But these are things that, could or could not be happening. And they don't always notify you. If you're lucky, they do, but the most part they don't notify you. So it's important that you check your out of the tap parameters. You could be on a well, and maybe your well has having issues or an animal died in there or something, and now you've got some ammonia. I'm just making stuff up, right? So check your water. At least try and do it once a month. Put a reminder on your phone, on your or on your calendar somewhere. Just check water. Use a test strip. I mean, that's fine. They've got um the 17 uh test test strips. I've found that they're mostly accurate. The drinking water one, I found that they're mostly accurate as long as they're not expired. But when we get down into things like nitrates versus nitrites, or if you want to know if there's ammonia, these test strips don't test for that. There are specific ammonia test strips, and I've never gotten those to work. So, and it probably is user error, but I prefer using liquid test kits. But if you're just testing your tap water, just use the test strips. So the other thing is, you're going to obviously determine if your water is hard or if you have soft water and what your pH is, because not every fish likes hard water, not every fish likes soft water. For example, I actually breed rainbow fish and I breed angelfish. Angelfish love my water. It's soft. The pH is low. My water buffer is low. So I do have to add things to the tank to be able to compensate for that. But then my rainbows, they want harder water, right? They want higher pH. So again, I have to add things to their tank to be able to compensate for that. Now, how you decide to go about adding those things, that is a personal choice. But the best way and the most consistent way is to add something that's a hardscape, or add something in a filter bag. If you have a hang-on back filter, add it into your hang-on back filter. We'll go over some different types here in a second. The other thing you can do is you can have an RO system set up. And depending on what you're looking for, they can be fairly inexpensive. Like if you have like a fish room like mine of almost 1,000 gallons, you will want a really big one that is way too expensive. But you'll want a bigger, RO unit, because what happens is that they only support so many gallons at a time. And so if you're trying to do major water changes, or you're trying to do a big water change on a huge tank, it may not support that amount of water. Um, the other thing that you need to do is, when you are pulling that water, you don't just put it straight into the tank, because that is water that has absolutely nothing in it whatsoever. You want to remineralize it based off of what your needs are, test it, let it age, and then you'll put it into your tank. So, the reason why you're letting it age is if, in case there is anything left over that the RO system didn't get through. But most cases that doesn't happen. But just, to me, I would think letting it sit for a day after you've put everything in there to make it at the parameters you want it to have, um, would be beneficial to the water. So I mentioned you want to avoid relying on additives. What happens is that, let's say you're using Seachem's equilibrium to increase your hardness, I think is what that one does, or pH, whatever. And you're adding that in. then when you do a water change, you've now taken out 25% of that additive. So now you have to add that back in. And that can get really tedious, especially if you're, using when I was breeding mystery snails, I used like all these sorts of different things, so that I can get the hardest possible water, get the highest possible pH, and get the highest possible buffer. And so then that way, my shells were absolutely beautiful, on my mystery snails for a while. So what ended up happening is that I had some uninvited guests in the tank, and then the fish in the tank were also out competing the snails for food, and my entire colony ended up dying over a few months. Um, there's, probably other factors too. I think that at that point I was moving things around, so the tanks were not the tanks that they were in initially, and because I was so spread thin, I was not able to stay on top of their tank as much as I had before. I'm trying to get back into breeding mystery snails. I'm still struggling, for whatever reason. I can't seem to get the mystery snails to stay alive. And I've had trouble getting good quality mystery snails too. So that's also been a challenge. Maybe I just need to start off like I did initially and get my little blue Gary from PetSmart, and then start there and work my way up again. I don't know, but I'm working on it. I get clutches every once in a while, but I haven't had clutch for a while, so I don't know what's happening with that tank and why that is. But that's also a tank with rainbows in it, and they eat all the food. So maybe that snail's not getting, or those snails are not getting enough food. So I need to find dedicated tank for those snails. So, that's just like there's a lot of things that you have to kind of think about, especially when you're doing multiple breeding projects at once. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So rather than use those additives, you can add things to your tank, like limestone. Limestone is great to increase the mineral content in your water. There's also different types of stones that are common in the hobby that you can add to your tanks that will help to increase the hardness. I think it's Ceru. I'm botching the pronunciation, sorry. But Sarayu stones, I believe, increase the mineral content in your water. Then you can add crushed coral. You can add oyster snails, oyster shells, argonite. Yeah, you guys know what I'm trying to say. Starts with an A. It's really good in for cichlid um, high mineralization tanks. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. So, rainwater. If you need to bring down the mineral content, rainwater is great. You can also buy spring water from the grocery store, but rainwater it's free. You can store it all year long and just, keep a lid on your rainwater tub, and they have the collapsible kinds too. You just store it away when you're not using it. It's just there's different things that you can do to help manage. Um, I don't use rainwater, but for my angelfish, they are perfect with my water as it comes out of the tap. Uh, but if I were to do a caridina shrimp, or if I were to do a fish that needs to have a lower pH, that doesn't want to have that neutral pH, then I would probably start collecting my rainwater, especially since I'm in the Pacific Northwest. It's not like we don't have any or anything. Um, a thing that So you also have to worry about your pH, right? So, if you're trying to lower your pH, peat moss is actually a good thing to put. There's also these peat balls or something like that that you can put into a bag and put them in your hang up back filter, and those will help to lower your pH. Um, botanicals, the Indian almond leaves, things like that. Those will help to lower your pH as well. To increase your pH, actually crushed coral helps with that too, and crushed coral helps with to help maintain your pH buffer as well. So, just do your research. There's tons of different things, and they're all budget friendly. Like limestone, you can get that at your local hardware store, or landscapes place, and it's not that expensive. You can get broken up pieces of limestone. If you want to make it part of a decorative thing, you can do that too. If you want to just throw it in your filter or throw it in a bag behind your sponge filter, it all whatever you need to do, right? So the other thing is you want to define your space. So you're going to decide, what it is that you want to breed. Let's say that you're going to start off like when I moved from snails to fish, I started off with guppies, and I got some free guppies off of Facebook, and I said I want to learn how to breed guppies because this is completely foreign to me. So I went and purchased tanks for the guppies, and but things I didn't do was I didn't account for, well, I'm bringing in more tanks, so that means more humidity. I'm using more electricity. I'm using more water. I'm going to require more heat. Do I have the capacity to be able to handle guppies? I was trying to think of a funny little uh, name for the guppies that had to do with their replication efforts, but whatever. Moving on. The but these are things that you have to consider, and these are things I did not consider when I went and got the guppy tanks. So I'm trying to remember what kind of tank it was. I think I got a couple 10 gallons, thinking that that's all I would need for it. And then it wasn't long after that that I moved them over to a 40 breeder, which is what I had the snails in. And you see the domino effect from there. Um, the water, how are you bringing the water into your room? Do you have a way to have like a utility sink right there? Do you have a way to make it so you don't have to carry buckets? Like, is it downstairs? Is it upstairs? Is it on the same level? Things like that. So like for me, I have an upstairs bathroom. So, and my fish room is in a basement. It's only a half level stairs to get down to the basement, but so I use the Python hose. I hook it up to the sink in the bathroom, and I bring that hose down, and then I hook it onto each tank. Well, then you get distracted, and suddenly the tank's overflowing. And I have floor coverings, but I have carpet underneath, which probably wasn't the smartest thing either. So you just really need to figure out what it is that you need in that space. Do as much research as possible. Heat and electricity. I found out as I started to get more tanks that the amount of usage of electricity was exceeding what the circuit could handle, and I was ended up tripping the breaker a lot. And which is why we're doing this project of grading the electrical in the room, and most likely adding a sub panel and a bunch more circuits and things like that. So, but so because of the fact that I couldn't utilize the electricity as the way I wanted to, I had to remove all the hang-on backs on my tanks, and I had to unplug all the heaters. And now I have a space heater going in the room, but that actually almost blows the circuit too. So I ended up taking a extension cord from the den, which is upstairs, same level as the bathroom, and bringing that down. Actually, it's two extension cords. I have one that is hooked up to the heater, and then one that is the heater and a dehumidifier, and another one that is hooked up to the other dehumidifier. And these are the constant running things within the room They are the biggest power draws. And so those individually need their own circuits because they're, like I think it's like 1500 watts or something like that for the heater. And most circuits, are 2000 watts. So learn about electricity. I've learned so much just trying to get bids and stuff for my electricity that it's nuts. But anyway, I digress. Humidity. I started to notice, and it's happening in this room too. I have a 14 gallon right over here, and then I have a 29 gallon behind me. I am getting mold on the windows. I don't have a dehumidifier in here because I had to steal it and bring it downstairs because I found the mold down there first, and the windows would be getting humidity all over them too. And so especially when it was colder outside, um, so I had to steal that dehumidifier, and then I didn't have one in here, so I keep the door in here open. But I'll be honest with you, when I come home from work, I can feel the humidity in the house, and it shouldn't be like that. I'm worried about, the growing mold in the house. I'm worried about, the flooring, the drywall, just like all these things. And so this is something I really need to focus on and pay attention to. We don't want to have mold down there. Because it's for our health too. In this house, we've already had issues with black mold due to a leak that was in our brown water pipe. So it was, it's just, I don't want to go through that again, essentially. Um, so that's something to think about. And then think about overstocking your tanks too. When you're breeding, you have to say, okay, I'm going to breed for this is my end tank of where I'm going to have these fish grow out in. So I want to breed that many fish. But if you continue to breed, and I made this mistake, but if you continue to breed after you've moved those fish over, now you have to find a place for those fish. And so you're now trying to do this like movement thing. And then if those fish are not ready to be sold out yet, they're not big enough. Now need to take those fish and put them elsewhere and elsewhere and elsewhere. And it becomes not good on the fish because you're overcrowding your fish, and you are having require you're making it so you have to do more maintenance because the more fish you have in a tank, the more often you have to take water out and put fresh water in. So if you have 50 aquariums in your fish room, that's 50 aquariums that you may need to take 10 to 15% out twice a week because you have overstocked tanks. So things to think about. Kind of plan it all out. Just get a piece of paper, get a book. Yeah, if you are an AI person, just talk to your, GPT and say, I want you to keep track of all this and, babble away into your GPT. It'll put it all into a document for you, save the document, send it back to you. And then you can save that onto your computer, your phone, or whatever, so you can go back to reference it. One thing I did learn, by the way, I was thinking, oh, I can use the GPT to keep track of all my parameters. And I didn't realize that it didn't store the information. So I went back a couple days later and said, okay, what was the parameters on tank rack 2, tank 3, or whatever? And it came back saying it didn't have that data. So you need to remember to extract the data when you're done that day. Even if you keep that chat open, you still need to extract the data. And you can even have it continuously update the same document too. So you can just take that spreadsheet and or Word document, whatever it is, and supply it to the GPT and just say, okay, I want you to update this with the following information. And then when it's done, it sends it back to you. And you just kind of keep going back and forth. So that way you don't have 50 billion. Just know with AI tends to hallucinate. AI thinks it knows best. AI will make changes to things. So you really have to have that human interaction. AI will not tell you what's wrong with your fish. Even though I do it all the time, I will put a picture in there and say, what's wrong with this fish? And it'll tell me some stuff. And they'll be like, no, that's not right. That's not right. That's not right. But it at least is kind of giving me some information of things to look at, like diseases I've never even heard of. And it's like, okay, let me go ahead and take that information. I'm going to research that. Nope, that doesn't fit the criteria here. Things like that. So, AI is not the end all be all. It is not your training tool. It is your assistant. That's what it is. Okay, off that soapbox. So when you set up your space, you have to consider how are you going to breed the fish. Some fish you can breed in a single tank. Let's say like plecos, for example. You can have them hatch out into the tank, and depending on the hides and things like that, those plecos will be perfectly fine. Rainbows, some of them actually don't do this, but rainbows, they eat their eggs. They will eat their babies. Same with Corydoras. But if you have enough hides, those babies will be just fine. So you just have to kind of decide, okay, how am I going to do this? For me, with the rainbows, what I do is I actually take my mop, and depending on how I'm feeling that week, I'll either sit there and pick through it and take all the eggs and put them in a container with some methylene blue, or I will take that mop and just throw it into the 5 gallon and write a date on it and walk away. Um, I don't tend to put in another mop at that time, which some people do, some people don't, just because of the fact that I'm trying to control the amount of fry that is in that tank at any given time. And if I have this constant conveyor belt of mops going into the tank, I'm going to have, 2 mops at a time potentially while I'm waiting for those eggs to hatch. So it's just for me, it's better just to do one mop, leave it in there for 10 to 15 days, depending on what kind of rainbow it is. The blue eyes, some of them take longer. And yes, I know that they're not technically rainbows, Gary. I'm just teasing. So, but, it's just like, so you have to kind of consider what your capacity is when you're doing this and how you want to have your movement of the fish. So like for once they go out of the 5 gallon, the rainbows actually go spend a little bit of short time in the 10 gallon. That's usually when I'm trying to, take a look at them. That's when I cull to see, okay, do we have any, weird looking spines or weird looking fins, things like that. Or are these good enough to go ahead and go on to the grout tank? And then the grout tank is a 75 gallon. um, I do the same thing with the angels too. The angels actually start in a fry tray, and then after like they get a little bigger, preferably when they start looking like they might be an angel, but it depends on how many I got out of that spawn. Then I'll move them from the fry tray into a 5 gallon or into a 10 gallon, depending on what I have available. Um, the other thing is to consider, well, what are you going to do with those tanks when they're not in use? So you want to keep something in there. Like if you're not anti-snail, you can have pest snails in there and that will help to continue the cycle. You can keep a mystery snail in there. I have that in narite snails. Anything that is going to at least create some form of bio. So then that way you'll be able to continue the nitrogen cycle. Words, sorry. It's a little later than I'm used to, talking. So, you have to bear with me. So the other thing you want to make sure of is like if there's some breeds that you're like, oh, okay, well, I've got, 6 different types of these rainbows. Well, it's a pair each. So why don't I just throw them all into this 40 breeder and, call it good? You can't do that because depending on if you're doing the melatoninania, they will crossbreed with the chilotherenia, but they'll also crossbreed with other melatonin. It just feel free to make fun of me all you want. Pronunciation is not my strong suit, but anyway, so you get my point. Some fish will crossbreed. Some of them you want to do that, like especially if you're trying to, uh, get a specific color of guppy, or if you're trying to combine different types of mollies to make this special one, or swordtails or whatever, then yeah, you can totally do it that way. But just be mindful of what you've got in the tank, and be mindful also of what is most healthy for the fish. So, like with rainbows, you don't crossbreed them, just so you know, because what's happening is you're taking that creature that there's either not very many left, or they only exist in the hobby, and you are essentially making it so that there's even less. You're making it because they all have an origin point, and we want to kind of keep that origin point. Now, there's some, like you'll have Bosemani's as an example. You'll have some that are from, various different locations for collection points, but that's okay if you cross them. But just know that you no longer have that collection point fish. You now have a tank bred Bosemani. Okay, getting off that soapbox. Sorry. So you're also going to want to plan your maintenance schedule. And you want to stay on top of it too. Now, it's okay if you're like, oh God, I just really don't feel like doing this today. I'm tired. It's been a long day at work. I have laundry to do, whatever. It's okay to skip a day, you know, do the bare minimum. And then just know that when you go back down, you're now going to have to do double. And you just have accepted that. But you do want to make sure to stay on top of it as best as you can, especially the bigger of a fish room you get, the more that you have to do it, or you have to find ways to automate it. I do not have any automation at this time. I would love to have automation, but I don't have the budget to do the plumbing work. So we're just one step at a time. That's all we can do. Um, you also want to figure out, how are you going to feed them? Are you going to do live foods? Are you going to do the processed, the baked foods, kind of like the pellets and things like that, or flake? So, are you going to do a combination of both? Like for me, I do baby brine in the morning for the fry, and then in the afternoon or evening, I will do the aquarium co-op magic fish feed. I almost said the N word. Sorry. It's not nano fish feed, but anyway. So I'll do that, and then that way I'm not going through a lot of brine shrimp. Um, I don't do worms. I don't do vinegar eels. Really, the truth of the matter is, other than the fact that I hate the smell of vinegar, um, I don't have the capacity to stay on top of keeping the cultures going. But baby brine shrimp, I can do that. And if I end up not setting it up that week or whatever, then what I just do is I just use the aquarium co-op food for both feedings, and it's just as good. And so I have alternatives. Um, and then research what's best for your species, and also research what's best for your schedule, and find your happy medium. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about some of my breeding practices, but I want to kind of just going to be frank and upfront. Fish die. Yes, you're going to feel sad about it. Yes, it is a living creature, and you may feel at fault of that fish dying, regardless of where is at in its life cycle. You may feel that you've done something wrong. You may sell somebody a fish that is now showing signs of disease or something like that, and think that you are the cause of that. You don't know if it's you or if it's something in their tank, or maybe you do. Maybe you're able to figure that out, but use it as a learning experience. Don't quit. Keep going. The more you learn, the better you're going to get, and the better you're going to get at identifying when things are not going as they should. Learn first. So don't expect to make millions of dollars out of this, retire and, open your own fish store, things like that. That takes a lot of work, and that takes a lot of effort. I'm going to tell you, my day job is staying there, and I'm not trying to make a replacement. Yeah, that would be nice, but I know that if I were to try and run a retail store, I cannot guarantee that I'd be able to, pay my bills. So it's important for me to keep this as a hobby and not as my job. Others have different points of view, and that's okay for you. And, I am excited for you and I am jealous. But, but they all had to learn. They didn't just start off and go, "Oh, okay, well, I'm going to open a store and because I got a fish tank." It doesn't work that way because you need to learn not just how to manage the fish and the livestock within, but you have to learn how to manage your inventory of your non-perishable things. You have to learn how to manage, the rental or purchase of, taxes and just blah blah. There's all these things. If you have somebody working for you, now you have to, deal with being an employer. So there's a lot to it. So just focus on one thing. Focus on the fish. Learn the fish first. And it might take you a year before you kind of get to selling fish. That's okay. Maybe you make a little bit of money selling fish and you're able to, or you give them away to, people through social media or through your club, whatever. It's all okay, but you got to have the patience. Don't overdo it. Don't do what I did. Full disclosure, my first year, I put a lot on my credit card. I'm ashamed of how much I put on my credit card. I'll be honest with you. Um, I I say that, and it is true that fish keeping for me started as a journey of healing, because I was dealing with grief, um, but it also became an addiction, and it became a dealing with getting new tanks, getting new plants, getting new fish, getting new Amazon delivered here every day, multiple times a day. I was going to the fish stores, I was buying fish online, and um, I wasn't considering the amount of money I was spending until I sat down and did my taxes. And that amount of money could make or break my family. So I took money away from my family for the hobby when I thought I was doing okay. I didn't realize how much I was spending. And so I was really ashamed. I'm still ashamed, but it was also a really good learning lesson from me. And so after I had discovered this, I said, okay, I need to narrow my perspective and I need to focus on just this one thing because of course, I want all the fish. Who doesn't? But I need to learn how to do this. And I need my bare minimum. I don't need to keep getting all the tanks off of Marketplace. I've actually run out of space. I don't need to get the new shiny. And I started listening to people around me, the local clubs, the other breeders that I've talked to online. That's the tips and tricks that they've done to bring costs down. And it helped me to be able to resist the urge, that impulse buy, at 11 o'clock at night while you're doom scrolling on your phone because you saw somebody short and went, "Oh, I like that fish. That's cool." And suddenly you're buying it off of their website, and, shipping fish is expensive. So, um, the other thing I have on here is breeding properly takes time. It's You're not going to have, add water, instant fish. Some, depending on the fish, some take a long time to grow. Some of them are quick. And, if you're trying to make a little bit of money while you're doing this, determine what is a good money maker for you, like a neocaridina shrimp, danios, guppies, things like that, that are quick turnarounds while you're also having that longer fish that you're learning. But don't take on too much. That's what's really important is like focus on one and then bring in another one once you kind of get to that point where they're in their grow out phase. And so that way you're monitoring it. Now, okay, I'm going to bring in another fish and learn how to breed this one. But then don't, like I said, make sure you don't put too many in your tank. So, but give yourself grace. Don't quit. It's okay to make mistakes. As long as you learn from them. So picking a fish. Um, so I think I've touched a little bit on this, but I want to just kind of reiterate. Start with an easy species. I started with mystery snails and went to guppies, and then I went from guppies to oh, I'm trying to remember now. Where did I go? I went to angelfish after guppies, and I still struggle with angelfish. The problem I'm having is that the after they lay their eggs, the eggs, and I'll put it in methylene blue and all that, but they end up fuzzing out. So um, I am still trying to figure out that process. I have a couple sets now that they actually will raise their eggs sometimes, not all the time, and I might get 10 out of a spawn, and that's okay because the next one I might get 15, and the next one I might get 20. I'm still learning. Um, but uh, just kind of figure out what's easy, work your way up. um and you need to learn what their ecosystem needs, like some depending on where they're from, like they could be a river fish, they could be a lake fish, they could be something that where they have to have lots of hides. Like with CPDs, for example, they do a lot better when they have a dither fish that swims above them. They feel more safe, and they do a lot better when there's a lot of them, and you'll see them a lot more. um, Cull responsibly. So just because you have a sick fish or a mutated fish does not mean that you should give that fish away. It doesn't always necessarily mean that you should, have that fish no longer be in existence either. Trying to say that politely because I don't know what YouTube's rules are on saying those kind of things. So you'll um, cull when necessary, but what does cull look like for you? My coal guppies actually go into a tank, and that's where they go. I don't kill them off. I don't see. I use the word. I don't, give them away. I'll only give away good quality fish. Now, in some cases, though, I might have somebody be like, "Oh, can I just have your calls?" And be like, "Oh, well, here's the thing, that's fine. It's kind of bent, and they've been their tail's a little droopy, or their tail has split, things like that." And they'll be like, "Oh, no, it's okay." And then I'll sell that person the guppy for $1. Um, so just if you are doing it, just communicate. Make sure the person is okay with receiving that kind of fish, but never sick fish. Never ever sick fish, because now you're taking that illness that was existed in your tank and you're putting it into that other person's ecosystem. Um, so breeding takes a lot out of fish. So you don't want to continuously breed the same pair of fish over and over and over again because you're shortening their lifespan by doing so. So, once you get to that point where you have a good set of ones, then retire those originals, put them into a display tank, and let them just kind of live happy lives, and they'll still make eggs, but they'll eat them, and there is no pressure because you're not putting them into a tank with the sole purpose of breeding. Uh, Take the best out of those F1s. Now those become the parents that you're going to be breeding from. When they reach that stage where it's like, okay, now your F2s, you have a good set, and you're also at that point breeding for characteristics that you enjoy, and uh, you'll have extra fish. Again, you can, give them away, you could sell them, you can, if your area has swaps, or auctions, with your clubs, There's always somebody looking for that fish. So, um, hi, you didn't expect to see my face so quick, right? So, after reviewing the entire video and the entire length of the video, I decided to split this up into three different parts. So here is the end of part one. And then on the next video entitled Disease will be the beginning of part two. Thanks for your patience.